Alright, so behind me you can see my forest floor waterfall bioactive terrarium. And so I've been building this over the past week, and I only filmed part of the process. I didn't film everything. But that's because most things in this was trial and error for me. So it was a lot of, seeing what worked, seeing what didn't work. So a couple of things I didn't film was cutting up and putting in the false bottom. So for the false bottom, I used Jap mat, wrapped in weed mat from Bunnings. And so what I also didn't film was putting together the rocks. So I filmed myself siliconing them in place, but I didn't film myself like working out how I was going to put them together and everything, because I wasn't entirely sure if I was going to film this video. But I filmed quite a fair bit of stuff. And so, yeah, we'll get into the video. And, yeah. Alrighty. So, this is the Exoterra Half Moon Micro. I will put its dimensions up on screen. So there's a few things that I've done off screen so far, and that is I've fitted in a false bottom. So this is just Jap mat and a weed mat from Bunnings, just cut to size. And so what that will do is it will create a drainage layer for water to go into. And as you can see, I've cut this recess back here so that I can fit in my compartment for the filter for the waterfall. And so the compartment for the filter for the waterfall is just a little sling container with a hole cut in the side covered in fly screen mesh to allow water to go in without debris going in, and it's topped with white filter foam mat just to stop anything from getting inside. So I'm just going to pop that in. And so what I'm going to do today is I'm going to fit and lock in place all my hardscape. For the hardscape, I have these really lovely, I believe this is elephant skin stone. I've got this really large rock that I plan on using as the focal point, and I have a few other small accent rocks. So I will be fitting those in and securing them as need be. And I also have this lovely piece of tiger wood that has been cut to size. So all I'm doing here is fitting things in the way that I believe they look the nicest. And when I like the way something looks, I will identify attachment points and secure them down with just beads of silicone. So this is 100% pure aquarium grade silicone. You can also secure things with expanding foam, which I was going to use, but I've decided that I like the silicone a bit more just for the design that I'm going for. The only problem I find with choosing silicone over, say, hot glue and expanding foam is that it takes a long time to dry, a long time to cure, a long time to gas off, and it smells. It has a very strong acetic acid, so vinegar smell while it's drying, and this can be quite irritating for some people. And because of its long curing time, things need to be quite secure while they cure. Now I want this hose to kind of sit like that, but I want it to look a little better. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut the hose even shorter than it currently is. So I will line it up in the way I want it to sit. So like that. And then I will cut it shorter. Accounting, of course, for this nozzle that is on it. So about there. Now you can use scissors. I'm using a trimmer just because I think it's easier. And so I will hide the outlet with plants and other rocks. Alright, I'm going to leave that to cure overnight, and then I will come back and dry fit the rest of the hardscape.
Alright, so it's been a couple of days. I've made some extra modifications. As you can see, I've added a couple more rocks and I put some scoria in the base. So this is just to help add some extra drainage and just to kind of raise everything up, and also to hold down the piece of filter foam mat that's over the back, over the filter compartment. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to add my substrate, and then I am going to just kind of run everything just to see how waterlogged the substrate gets, which will determine the kind of plants I can add. Hello, Onion. My helper is here. He wants to be on camera. Hey, buddy. How are you? Look at my crickets, buddy. Alrighty, so I'm just gonna add the substrate. I'm gonna get out the shot, bud, sorry. So my substrate is just a mix. Okay, if you're gonna help, can you sit over there? My substrate is just a mix of cocoa coir, horticultural charcoal, sphagnum moss, sand, and a little bit of Dimax aquasoil that I had left over, as I've heard that can actually work quite well in terrarium type systems. And so I'm just going to add it in. I'll be adding a fair bit since I do plan on adding live plants. And I'll just take my paintbrush and spread it out as I go. So the places where I've built up the scoria the most is close to the rock and back in the filter compartment, because those are the areas that will be getting the most water. That's also where I'll be putting a lot of the substrate. Now I want it to be quite deep since I am adding live plants. I don't plan on adding anything too large. I just plan on adding mostly ferns and mosses and epiphytic, so plants that grow on rocks and don't need to be like in substrate. And then after I put this substrate in, I will be doing a test run. I think I said that already. It's quite late, I'm very tired. Oh, I also added a piece of flat cork to the back here, just to take some pressure off the back from where the rock is pressing against it. And I also cut a hole in the lid for the cord of the pump to fit through. So as you can see, I'm just using my brush to get the substrate down into all these places, all these different places. Now, I'm not going to be, since there's horticultural charcoal in my mix, I didn't need to put down a layer, but a layer of horticultural charcoal for especially something this wet is important, as it will stop the smell and it will keep things fresh. So the smell I'm talking about is when you work with like organic material, like the cocoa coir and sphagnum moss and stuff, eventually it does start to break down, and it gives off this very acrid, decaying smell. And so the charcoal just helps kind of minimize that smell, and it also keeps the water fresh. Now, since this substrate was upcycled from Baal's old enclosure, it should already have springtails in it, but once I add plants and everything, I'll be adding more springtails into the mix. Alright, this is going to be a very, very wet enclosure. And so springtails will be of the utmost importance to help with mold. Alright, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and I'm going to get some dechlorinated water, and then I'm going to do a test run and just see how everything's running. So I've just got it turned around like this because I just want to fill it up just up to the point where I can see that the water is covering the pump. To about there. I think once I can adjust the flow with the addition of some plants, that it will be perfect. Now I have a general idea for the kind of plants to add to this kind of system, but they're going to have to be stuff that can deal with it being very, very wet and humid. So I will be back once I have the plants.
Alright, so it didn't record me putting the plants in, or more I should say, I didn't hit record for me putting the plants in, which was an error on my part, but the plants I have in there are a rabbit's foot fern, some moss and suasitang, some java fern and Anubias nana petite, which I sequestered from my aquariums. I also have some white vein Fittonia in there as well. I have red vein Fittonia in some of my other terrariums, and it's done fantastically. I did want to put in pothos and or a Boston fern, but I couldn't find the pothos. I couldn't get the pothos to fit anywhere where I felt like it felt natural, and the Boston fern that I had was just too big. So I do have just an aquarium light on it for now, just for the plants until I can get a better light, but everything appears to be running fine. I've chosen plants that do well in high humidity environments. So ferns do fantastic, mosses do fantastic. The Java fern and the Anubias are both aquarium plants that can grow immersed, which is out of the water so long as their roots are wet. So I've placed them in key locations where the water flows so that their roots are constantly wet. And yeah, I'm hoping that once the ferns and the Fittonia establish, that everything comes up really nice. So I won't be stocking this enclosure in this video, but I do plan on stocking it with powder blue isopods. There are some springtails in there already, so powder blue isopods and maybe snails. So just something that can deal with that like high humidity kind of environment. But yeah, anyway, I hope you enjoyed this build as much as I enjoyed building it. This was my first attempt at something like this. So a couple of things I would do differently is I would raise this false bottom well above what the waterline would need to be for the pump to work, so that the moisture, the substrate isn't as moist and waterlogged as it currently is. I would also probably swap out the Jap mat for something just a little easier to cut. The Jap mat did prove to be quite frustrating. I would probably use a slower or a lower profile pump. But otherwise, I'm quite happy with how it turned out. I do plan on doing something similar in the future, so this was just kind of a trial run to see how everything worked, and I really like the way everything turned out. The one I plan on doing in the future, however, will have a dedicated water section, and so the water feature will be built into that water section so that the substrate doesn't become so wet and waterlogged. But yeah, that is my Waterfall Terrarium forest floor build. I hope you enjoyed it. Yeah, and if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the notifications icon. Also follow me over on Instagram. And yeah, I will see you next week. Bye-bye.